Okay, good evening. I'm Heather Campbell, and I'm the curator of museum programs for the University of Richmond Museums. And I'd like to welcome you to our virtual program titled The Connection Between Climate Change and Creativity with artist Nancy Judd. This program is presented in conjunction with the exhibition Alterations, Tailored Solutions to Climate Change, which is currently on view in the Harnett Museum of Art through April 22nd. And I'm also very happy to be able to announce that our campus has finally reached the green stage, meaning that we can let people on campus and we can let people in our museum. So if you are interested in coming to campus, seeing our museum, whether you're on campus or in the greater community, you are so welcome to do so. Before you come, you might check out our website to make sure that you're up to date with our hours and so that you know what is on view. So museums.richmond.edu is where you need to go. So since a lot of you have not been to the museum lately, I'm going to show a quick PowerPoint of what Nancy Judd's artwork looks like in our museum. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Okay, so I'm not going to talk too much about what you're seeing because I'm going to let Nancy do all of that. But you can see her artwork is amazing. She pairs it with wonderful labels that explain what is going on, what the pieces are made out of, and what some solutions are to the issues that she raises. Okay, so I'm just going to briefly tell you a little bit about Nancy, but I'm not going to tell you too much because, like I said, she's going to tell you so much more. Nancy Judd is an artist. She's an environmental advocate, and she's also a teaching artist. And for many years, she's been creating sculptures from discarded materials and using them as a starting point for bigger discussions about how we live on the planet. Nancy uses her creativity to spark inspiration and action in the audience who's interacting with her work. So I will let Nancy take it away and tell you more about herself.
Hey y'all, I got to have a big smile on my face because I just saw my friend John Olson has joined us, and we've known each other since maybe first grade. So it's super sweet that he's here. He's always been such a big advocate of me and my work. So lovely to see you, friend. And thank you all for coming and spending the evening with me. I'm honored that you will spend the next hour with me and that you're interested in hearing about my work. And I hope we'll have a good time together. I am going to start out and I'm going to start with a little land acknowledgement and ask you a little question, and then I'm going to show you a video that talks about the making of some of my work and talk about my story, how I got from a little first grader with John Olson to here today, and then we're going to answer questions. So any point along the way you have any questions, just throw them in the chat, and then Heather's gonna be managing that. We'll get to have a fun conversation. And then at the end, my audio is dropping. Okay, I just got a little note about that. Thank you. So how bad is it? Should I try my different earbuds?
It's maybe adjust the connector into your computer.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Is that the same? It's okay. Let me just grab my earbuds. Hold on one sec.
Sorry, everyone, technical difficulties.
Okay, I'm just gonna have to sync them, probably. I think they're connecting right now. Let's see. Sorry about this, everybody. We thought we'd done all this tech stuff beforehand, but that didn't work. Okay, I don't know why. So let me just ask you, I'm good again. Okay, so you're saying right now you can hear me well? Okay, okay, well then let's go with this. Okay. And I'll just interrupt me if you're having a hard time at any point hearing me. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And I would like to start out here with a land acknowledgement about where you are. Not that. Not you yet. I don't know how we jumped there. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to talk in a moment about why I'm starting with this, but let's begin. The Alterations exhibition is in the University of Richmond Museum. Acknowledges and I'm going to do my best at saying these names correctly, and please forgive me if I get it wrong. The Powhatan Nation and the neighboring tribes of the Monacan, the Pamunkey, the Chickahominy, the Arahuatek, and the Yucatan, the traditional custodians of this land. We pay respect to those who have, by their own volition or not, tended, honored, lived, and died on this land. We offer our respect to the ancestors of the land and the peoples, past, present, and future. And we invite you to take this moment to pause to consider our indivisible connection to this land and to each other. And if you'd like to learn more about whose land you're on, nativeland.ca, it's a Canadian nonprofit, is an amazing resource for that. And so I'm coming to you from the Chinook Nation, and which is in what's known as Portland, Oregon as well. And one of the reasons that I feel like for my work, it's really important to do land acknowledgements is that within my work, I've started really to explore the connection between climate change and the forced removal of Indigenous people from their lands, the people who for tens and thousands of years took care of this planet, and so that we could be here today. And in the relatively very short period of time that the United States anyway was colonized, we have made this planet on the way to being uninhabitable. And so I really believe that there's a huge connection right there. And that's part of what my personal work is exploring more and more. So I wanted to share one of my pieces. There's a couple of pieces in this show that really speak to that issue. And now, okay, here's a funny little thing. I have to go and get out of the slideshow here. And sorry about that, just a little technical moment. And let's let me share my screen again. And then there we go. Okay. Just kind of messing up my flow, but we'll be back on track. Okay. So this is a piece called Opal. And it's my only sculpture that I've ever made, and that's in this show, that has a poem that just sort of came to me when I was almost done with it. It says, "More and more, the spirits of the land felt forgotten by humans. So before they disappeared to the people forever, they made themselves seen. Branches, flowers, and seeds wove themselves together and created a sprite to say, as you pollute the air, the water, the soil, as you cause plants and animals to die away, as you change the very earth itself, don't forget us. While you live your lives working, worrying, driving, doing, remember our wildness in yourselves." And so I'm just going to invite you for a moment to think about, where do you go to remember the wildness in yourself? And I'd like you to just drop that in the chat. What are the places that you go in nature to connect, to relax, to look at birds, to just enjoy the wilderness? And I just, since I can't see any of you, it would just be nice to kind of know you're there. So if you could just include that in the chat, please. And I just want to see where some people go to the beach, the lake. People are definitely the beach, the mountains, the woods, by the water. Your backyard. Yeah, sometimes we think about nature as having to be out there away from us, but truthfully, nature is our backyard. We're nature. Our bodies, I mean, we close our eyes like we are in nature, right? We're part of nature as well. Listening to the wind in the trees. Lovely. Forest Hill Park. We have a forest park here in Portland as well. It's hundreds of miles long. Thank you. I appreciate. Feel free to keep adding if you want to. So I am going to show this video now. Okay. Sorry, friends. I have to stop sharing. This is very clunky. And then I have to go back to my slideshow and advance it. Hopefully it won't happen the whole time like this, for crying out loud. Okay. And here's a video about the exhibit in case you haven't seen it yet. I've been transforming trash into eco-fashion sculptures since 1998 and using them in public venues to initiate conversations about how we live on this earth. My name is Nancy Judd, and I'm an artist and an environmental educator. Art is a really great way of engaging people and inspiring them to look at how they live on the earth. I think we all understand that our environment is questions about, can human beings actually continue to live on the earth with the changes that climate change is bringing? Each of us has an impact. Every day we make hundreds of decisions that impact the environment negatively or positively. So we really need to transform how we live on this earth. And this exhibition points us in that direction. I'm really excited to be collaborating with Drawdown Eco Challenge on this exhibition because their work is based upon research.
We purposely have researchers from all around the world, different backgrounds, different disciplines, because all of these perspectives are necessary. It's not enough to try to limit global warming to 2 degrees. What we need is drawdown. We need to reverse global warming.
By working with activist and artist Nancy Judd, we are pairing our Drawdown Eco Challenge actions to global environmental issues we are facing today.
We have linked each of my sculptures with an Eco Challenge action. That is a specific thing that you can do to help draw down CO2 in the atmosphere and mitigate climate change. Carton couture is made out of cartons that milk alternatives come in. To make it, I took the cartons and I first cleaned them out. I opened them, I cut them, I tore the pieces apart. I cut them into little strips. I folded them and finally sewed them onto the dress. We have a misunderstanding about the sell by, use by, buy by dates printed on packaging. And those really are about peak deliciousness, not about if the food has gone bad or not.
1/3 of the world's food produced is wasted. So we want to use carton couture as a way to inspire people to reduce their food waste. We need to learn more about expiration dates that we see on our food.
The citrus lace dress is made out of orange peels. To make it, I peeled the oranges, I punched them into little circles, I strung them onto pieces of wire, I painted each of the circles, and then I sewed it onto a dress that's made from upcycled cheesecloth. It was inspired by one grandmother's wedding dress from the 1920s and another grandmother's opera dresses.
We really hope that the citrus lace dress inspires people to eat more fruits and vegetables and reduce their meat consumption. Meat consumption really contributes to greenhouse gases. We want people to be mindful of that through the actions they take. So try reducing your meat consumption by doing a vegetarian or vegan meal a few times a week.
The Rise Above Plastics cape is a collaboration with the Surfrider Foundation. I made it throughout the year at different Surfrider events, and people helped me to string the straws onto the threads that I then sewed onto the cape. The Drawdown Eco Challenge related is to stop using single-use plastics.
Everyone can make a different choice when it comes to plastic items in our lives. We can look for reusable items, something you can take with you and use over and over again that's not contributing to the plastic pollution that we have in our oceans, in our land, and in our world.
The Coat of Hope is made out of scrap Tyvek that was made into a coat and then covered in strips. I made this coat because I honestly was feeling a little bit hopeless myself around the state of the environment, and I needed a little bit of infusion of hope from other people. And so on those strips that I tied to the coat, I asked people to write down things that they were hopeful for, related to the environment or to community or their neighborhood.
The Coat of Hope is such an important piece because educating women and girls is the #1 solution identified through Project Drawdown that can reverse global warming. Half of the world's population are women, and each of you can make a difference through supporting women-owned businesses.
Hope is the other side of the coin of action. If we don't have hope, then we're not going to take action. And to take action, we really need to have hope. My ultimate hope is that each of my sculptures inspires people to change their day-to-day actions that impact the environment. This exhibition inspires a constellation of solutions to addressing climate change, from individual actions to holding our elected officials responsible to pressuring industry.
Is drawdown actually possible? We determined that yes, it is, if these solutions are aggressively scaled over the next 30 years and if they're implemented and practiced collectively.
We invite you to visit drawdown.ecochallenge.org to select actions that suit you and start building new habits today.
These solutions are what we call no-regret solutions. They should be implemented regardless of their climate impact because they have economic benefits, financial benefits, human health benefits.
This is the time to make radical changes about how we live on this earth. So I invite you to engage your creativity and tailor solutions that will be part of the transformation. This exhibition is starting in the Atlanta International Airport on the traditional territory and homelands of the Muskogee Creek Nation. After a year, it's going to travel to museums around the country that are also located on other indigenous lands. Okay. So yeah, I feel like showing that video is, you know, a picture in a video is worth 1,000 words, and so I like showing that because it shows the process quite a bit of creating several of the pieces, and I can answer more questions about that as we go. But one of the things that Heather had mentioned to me, that when some of the groups of students had come through, there was some curiosity about my path to getting to where I am. And so I feel kind of, I don't know, I feel a little weird talking about myself this much. So I'm gonna kind of move through this part of the presentation sort of quickly, but it'll give you a feeling of for how I started doing what I am doing. So let me just get back on track here with my presentation, and there we go. This is where it all started for me. This is the Portland Art Museum, and that's me. And I kind of literally grew up in this building. My mother was the president of the an arts college that was connected to the museum, and so that's kind of where my arts life began. She, from as young age as possible, had me in every art class and dance class and such. So I had a very lucky, privileged life in many, many ways, and that was one of them. This is the on the Oregon coast. Like I said, I'm in Portland now. I grew up here, and this is an area called Cascade Head, which is on the Oregon coast near Lincoln City. And when I was little, my parents bought a piece of land about right here, and my stepfather, who is an artist and sculptor builder, built our family a home there, which he still lives in now. And so I was 7 when that happened, and they gave me a free run of all of this area. I could just kind of go wherever I wanted. And so this is where I really learned to connect with nature and those wild spaces and wild spirits of nature. And so it's kind of these two things sort of collided for me later in life. My first recycled fashion was made for this little teddy bear that my grandmother gave me. You can see it right here. And so I just would use little scraps of this and that, little studs from the dog collar, to make my little teddy bear some clothing. When I went to college, I was studying art and sociology, and so my early artworks where I was studying photography, and so they were also about this idea of kind of the wildness of nature and the clash between that and capitalism. And so I had, this was from a series of photos for my senior show called In the Wake of Our Steps. So when I was at art school, this sort of random thing happened, and the art school put in a soda pop machine, and that soda pop machine changed the course of my life. I kind of expected I would become a working artist, but I watched that garbage can fill up with the garbage can next to the soda pop machine fill up with soda cans, and it just bugged me. So I asked the school if I could get a recycling bin, and they said sure. And then I got really curious, well, who's going to pick up the recycling, and where does it go, and what does it get made into? And so I had one semester left to graduate, and I did an independent study in recycling and solid waste management. And then that kind of led to this career in recycling. And so my first kind of real job was working for the city of Santa Fe as the recycling coordinator. And, I'm just going to pause for a minute and say that I just feel like I have to recognize the privilege that I've had in my life. I was able to go to a private school as a kid for 12 years. I was able to go to college, and it was paid for out of an inheritance. And so my white privilege, my class privilege, my settler privilege, it has all been a part of my story, and it feels strange not to recognize that as I'm talking about how things have progressed for me. When I was in Santa Fe, I started this event called the Recycle Santa Fe Art Festival. And so I was the recycling coordinator, and I was trying to get people to think differently about trash. And I knew there was a lot of artists that use recycled materials. And so we started this event, which is now, I guess, about 23 24 years old, still going on in Santa Fe. And we would kick it off with a trash fashion show. And so that's how I started making trash fashions, is just to promote the event, essentially. And then every year I would make another one, and then people started giving them to me. And my colleagues in the recycling world around the country found out about this collection of recycled garments that I had, and started to invite me to come to their communities to put on recycled fashion shows. And so without any effort on my part, it just started to have a life of its own. So this is that first recycled event, fashion show and art market. And this was the first fashion I made. It's not in this show, but it's called the Junk Mail Fan Dress. And it's made out of junk mail that was folded into fans and then sewn onto this dress. And the base of the dress is made out of scrap canvas. So one of my goals for all of my pieces is that they are like 99% upcycled in some way, or reused material. So the thread and zippers often aren't, but that's about it. Yeah, that's a close-up of the junk mail, pretty junk mail. So this is one of those fashion shows that I did. And I did this for about 7 years. And so as you can imagine, like here's the junk mail fan dress. This was like horrible wear and tear on the garments. And fashion shows aren't really that, I'm not into fashion per se. I just am inspired to make sculptures in my mind. They're sculptures that look like clothing. So I just kind of wanted to stop doing these fashion shows. Plus, my interest was really in education, in getting people to look differently at trash. It's broadened since then, but at that point, and so these events, I just felt like I was more like entertainment for recyclers, and so I stopped doing the fashion shows and started to do airport exhibits. So just installing my work in high traffic locations, and airports were great because millions of people pass through airports and they aren't there to think about environmental issues. So it was kind of this fabulous intervention that I could do. So I've done, I don't know, probably maybe half a dozen or so airport exhibitions. In the Atlanta airport, this is where this photo is taken, is the height of that. For me, it's the busiest airport in the world, and I've had 2 exhibits there. This was the first one, and then the second one is the alterations exhibit that's with you all right now. And then I turned that first exhibition into a traveling museum show, and it was called Redress Upcycled Style. And then the second exhibit I also decided to turn into a traveling exhibit. So the first one traveled for about 5 or 6 years around the country, and this one hopefully will as well. So in addition to my traveling exhibits, I also give a lot of talks. This is a TED talk I gave. I've given 2 different TEDx talks, not TED Talk, TEDx talks. And I'm also a teaching artist. And this is one of the things that I do that just brings me a lot of joy. Is I love working with kids, and I've been trained in something called arts integration, which is a little bit different than teaching arts for art's sake. It's about providing creative experiences for students to learn or reflect on different curricula. So, for instance, this was the top photo here with all these kids. Is we were using dioramas made from recycled materials to explore, I think this was primarily oceans and the impact of plastic on oceans. So this really fed into their science curriculum. This photo down here was from a kindergarten class, and they were studying insects. And so here they got to make sure that they had all the elements of an insect on there. So again, kind of connecting it with science. And then I got invited by my friend and colleague Dina Dart to do some Native American cultural sensitivity trainings with her. She works with museums to help them to decolonize their Native American art collections. And as part of that, she does cultural sensitivity trainings for the whole staff. And so she asked me to do some arts integration exercises with the participants. And so after like a really difficult content area, maybe about like what genocidal, what colonization looked like in their area, then we would do one of these exercises here, exploring some of the themes that they pulled out of her talk using found objects and human-made objects. So I love doing that work, and as part of that, Dina and I created this piece, which is in the museum there, and it's called The Invisible Suit of Settler Privilege. And so one of the things that one of the activities that we would do during or that we still do during our workshops is that we talk about this idea of settler privilege. I think most of us are familiar with the concept of white privilege, but there's a series of privileges that happen for us as non-native people that native people don't have. For example, I don't worry that when I die, my language will die with me. that's a privilege that I have. And so there's about 20 of those that we talk about in our trainings. And so I fashioned this suit after one that my grandfather, who was the treasurer of Standard Oil in California, wore at the height of his career, a pinstripe suit. And it's made out of Tyvek material that I dyed black. And then I put these little silver pinstripes on it. And between the stripes, we would ask people to write down the privileges that they related to, or that really stuck out for them. And then I sewed it into the suit, and he's standing on a pile of garbage, essentially. Again, kind of harkening back to that connection between colonization and and climate change. So Dina and I are continuing to work together, and this was really the last fashion that I've made, and it's the last one I expect to make, quite honestly. I'm in a transition period in my artistic practice. And I think after over, I don't know, about 25 years of doing recycled fashions, I'm ready for new kinds of work. And I love working in community rather than me as the artist, kind of more collaborative pieces. And so we are currently, my colleague Dina and I are working on this piece. It's called The Tree of Acknowledgement, and it's going to be in the headquarters of the Stanley Center for Peace and Security, which is in Muscatine, Iowa. And it's made out of recycled aluminum railings from the old library that they are turning into their new headquarters. But the most exciting thing to it for me are the leaves that go on there. And the leaves are essentially a conversation between Native and non-Native folks. And the conversation is about, what does meaningful reparations look like? And the question will first be posed to Native folks, especially the Meskwaki Nation in Muscatine. But then actually it will be something that we'll be asking through social media throughout the country as well. And so we're gonna take those responses that we get from Native folks and share them with non-Natives and say, okay, here's what our friends are telling us, what meaningful reparations would look like to them. What are you willing to do? So, for example, this one says, as a guest of the Meskwaki lands, I commit to learn their history. Or it might be, I commit to paying monthly rent to the Chinook Nation. That's something I started doing about a year ago. So, but I don't know what all is going to be written on there. And that's the exciting thing about this project for me, is it's a learning process for all of us. So yeah, that's where I'm going to stop now. And yeah, wow, look at what time it is. Okay, some questions. Are there any questions, Heather, that you want to ask?
Yes, I have so many questions. So I just want to remind everybody to enter questions into the chat if you have questions for Nancy, but I will jump in. So Nancy, we've had a lot of students come with their classes to visit your exhibition. And a lot of these students have been in geography classes, sustainability classes, museum studies classes, and all of our students are really in tune with sustainability and just, taking care of the environment as a whole. And I wondered if you had any advice for students who were wanting to learn how to protect resources better, be better stewards of the planet. What is your advice to students who are looking to do better?
Well, I think it's kind of connected in some ways to one of the themes from what I just shared about my my career journey was really always all about paying close attention to what was interesting to me or where the energy was. And so I think that's true as well about caring for the environment, is that it really needs to be personal. It's really about, our, like, that's why I started by asking that question about, what are the lands that inspire you? Where do you love to go? I think that the more we can become really specific and connect back in with the lands, I think that's super, super important. That's, I think, part of why it's our pulling ourselves apart from the land that has gotten us to where we are, in my opinion. But also some people get energized by specific issues that aren't necessarily land-based. It might be like for me, it was recycling when I was younger. Or it might be about air quality for somebody else, or environmental social justice issues. So I think it really begins with just paying attention to what is what excites you, what's interesting to you, what are you curious about.
So what has surprised you the most in your creative and activist journey? Is there anything that stands out?
Well, I would say the process of being inspired is the best thing to me about being a creative person, and that feeling of inspiration when you get an idea of what energizes you. And let me just say, I don't think that is only for artists. I think as human beings, we're all creative people, and so we were born creative. And whether you express that through a sculpture, a painting, solving a math problem, inventing something, gardening, whatever it is, that is a gift of being alive, is being able to connect kind of with inspiration. And so I've really learned that, though, through my career. Yeah.
So what has been your most favorite creation that you've made?
Well, that's like, which is your favorite child? You're asking me an impossible question, but there's a piece, Pacifica, that's in the show, and that one was created at Cascade Head. It was commissioned by the Nature Conservancy that protects the lands where my family's home is, and it's made from the seashells and the driftwood and the salmon spines that were gathered along that seashore. And that's got to be probably one of my favorite pieces, just because it was so personal to make.
Yeah, that's actually one that I love to talk about in the show because it's so different from most of the others. And I do have a question. Is that one wearable?
No.
Okay. I
No.
didn't think so, but I thought it's not impossible.
Yeah. It's not impossible. That's true. There are some that are impossible to wear, and that one could potentially be worn, but would be extraordinarily uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question in the chat. Do you have any favorite messages that people have written for your works that had people contribute their thoughts to them, like the Code of Hope, or the suit of invisible settler privilege?
Hmm. Well, there's ones that stand out because they're humorous. Like I just remember with one of my pieces, there's several pieces I've done with children specifically that ask them about how they can help the environment. And I just remember this little 5-year-old saying, "I won't scratch the earth." I just always remembered that because I thought it was so funny. Um, uh, in the video on the Code of Hope, I really, really loved, there was one in Spanish that said, un pueblo sin fronteras. So I go, I interpreted that basically as a world without without borders. And so that's one to me that I really love and appreciate. In the Yeah, and on the settler privilege one, there was one that somebody added about how, like, I don't worry, or I don't, um, I can't remember how that it was worded, but essentially it was that my ancestors' bones aren't buried in the cement walls around churches. That was just one that really stuck out to me. Yeah, there's so many.
Yeah, I won't scratch the earth. I think that's pretty good advice.
I know.
Okay, so the next question is, where is the exhibition going next? And have you noticed a difference in reception of the work depending on the venue, like being in an airport versus a university museum versus a public museum?
Yeah, that's a good question. Where it's going to go next? I think Stanford. I forget where, the Woodson Museum. I'm forgetting where it is. I think that's going to be its next venue. There's a woman who I work with who represents the traveling exhibit, and so she's got a handle on that more than I do. But yes, there's a huge difference, especially looking at like an airport versus a museum. An airport might have like millions of people pass through it, but it's kind of not a very deep dive that somebody might spend, they might have a layover and spend hours looking at it, but it's most likely that I'll get, between 30 seconds and maybe a couple minutes of somebody's attention. But at a museum, museums like yourself that have the opportunity to do really, really solid programming can dive so much deeper into the messages. And there's so many kind of different places you could take the show. And so that's super exciting to me. And so I think there's also a difference between museums as well. Like, I'm so excited to have it at a university museum because of all the students and the professors, and again, the different, it could be obviously an environmental class that looks at it, but it also could be a history class, or it could be a social studies, or there's lots of different entry points. And so that's really exciting to me as well.
So it looks like our questions are done. Do you want to move on to your poem?
Well, yeah, I thought I'd do an experiment, you all.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm an arts integration art teaching artist. And so I've never done this before, but I thought it might be fun for all of us to create a little poem together and in the chat. And so this is what we're going to do. I was talking about that idea of inspiration, and so what I'd love for you to do is answer this question about how creative, like, the idea is that inspired creativity comes in many forms. Like I said, for me, it's in sculpture, but for other people, it could be in solving a math problem or whatever it is. And so I'm going to start, and I'm going to write in the chat this phrase. Inspired creativity comes in many forms. And then in the chat, I'd like you to write what that is for you. And then this is going to, we'll see how it works, but this is going to create a little poem that I'm going to read at the end. So don't write anything yet. And let me put this in. Okay. So there's the beginning of our poem. So I'm going to invite everybody to write in the chat to everyone, how do you experience creativity in your life? So I'm going to say, like, I'll start. I can give an example. I'll say, reading sculptures from trash. Let's see what else other people say. And then I'm just going to wait and let you put in the ways that you find inspiration. Might take you a moment to think about it for a second. Could be in like how to fix the motor of your car. Like, there's so many ways that creativity shows up in our lives. I'm just going to wait about a minute more and then I'll read our little co-created poem. Okay, let's see how this goes. Again, this is an experiment. We're co-creating here together. If you want to add on, go ahead. Inspired creativity comes in many forms. Creating sculptures from trash. First, meditation, then sometimes problem solving. Walking, forever walking the pup. I find inspiration when I am drawing. Arranging sticky notes on my wall, finding an outlet to zone out and relax, swapping stories with strangers. I rescue original creations from Goodwill, original art, fiber arts, reframe things, using rescued materials, skiing the pow, poof. To be human is to be inspired. To be human is to be creative. All right, my friends, thank you. Thank you for spending the hour with me. I'm honored to be asked. Thank you to the museums, to Heather and to David for one of my best poems ever, for having me. And I hope if you haven't been able to, you can now go see the show that I think you can walk in the museum and see it. Right, Heather? Yeah. And I also believe that the museum is maybe creating a 360 exhibit of it, right? Or video?
Yes, so we had a photographer come in just today and do the filming for that. So
Oh,
that should be on our website, hopefully within the next week or so. So be on the lookout for that. And Nancy, thank you so much. This was a great hour to spend on a Thursday. Is it Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday. Anyway, we appreciate it, and I appreciate our audience. Thank you, everybody.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.